So, a couple of months ago, I received this through the letterbox, warning me that there was going to be disruption to your neighbourhood owing to the installation of high-speed broadband. Now, I have now had that high-speed broadband installed, and when I was researching this company called Brsk, B-R-S-K, a lot of what I found was actually their channel saying how great they were. So I was a little bit skeptical at first, and I'd heard a little bit of some troublesome news from neighbours about relatively high pressure salespeople saying you could get 150 quid off your existing debt to the current broadband provider by switching to them. So I thought, okay, well, yeah, but salespeople are always there to make sales. They're going to be a bit pressured in their approach. That's what they're paid to be. Fair enough. So as I was walking around the neighbourhood with the dog, I had a few chats with some of the guys who were going up and down telegraph poles installing bits of kit. And they did give me some reassurance about the fact that no, they weren't a nationwide company, but yes, they were vigorously growing their network coverage in the UK, which sounded positive, because obviously you need some cash behind you to be able to do that. And they very clearly knew whereof they spoke. So I thought, yeah, okay. I've got a Masters in Information System. It's a rather old one these days, admittedly, but I try and keep my hand in so I know roughly what the crack is when it comes to broadband and technology and stuff like this. So I was with Virgin Media, and I'd been taking Virgin Media for a number of years. But of course, we've now got to this point in time where I was paying a lot in other subscription fees for services like Disney Plus, Paramount, Amazon Prime, and getting a lot of content from them, or actually these days getting content through my TV just by virtue of it being internet enabled. So all of these things were happening, and I just thought, what is my Virgin Media box actually giving me anymore? And the answer was very, very little. But the only thing I've watched on it recently was stuff over Christmas, like Wallace and Gromit. And even then I could probably have gotten that off the iPlayer app. So really, my use case for paying Virgin extra money for any form of TV package was very, very limited. And they were charging me quite a lot, even for the basic package, which I'd already downgraded to. And then I would have had to have waited about 30 days to completely cancel TV. But then, of course, I still couldn't get any new subscriber opportunities, even though I was out of contract, because I was still with them. It's very confusing, very difficult, apparently, to leave at times. But I was out of contract, so I thought, well, they can't pling me for anything extra because I'm out of contract anyway, so I'm fairly free to manoeuvre at this point. So I said to myself, okay, let's research Brsk. Let's see what they're about. Let's see if I can get comfortable with this as a concept, because all of my Virgin Media kit was installed. I was getting very solid download speeds, but what I will come back to is upload speeds. So I researched Brsk, and at the time of recording, their Trustpilot scores were through the roof in a good way. They were high, and people generally seemed very happy with the service that they got from them. Now, my nervousness was that they weren't nationwide. I don't think they'd been going for a huge amount of time relative to some of the established providers. But what they do, which many providers didn't when I really started researching hard, they do give you symmetric speeds. So let me explain that for you. On the screen now is my Virgin Media speed test. You can see that gives me 250 megabits a second down, but only about 25 up. So 10% up compared to 100% down, basically. So quite a big differential. Now, this use case is not relevant to everybody, but I do YouTube videos. Here I am. That means that I need to upload quite chunky files on a fairly regular basis. So the upshot of that is that the faster my upload speed is, the less time I waste having to hang around waiting for something to upload. Simples. So And I thought, wow, okay, so you're telling me that for under £30 a month, compared to more than double that version, I can get 500 megabytes per second down and up from Brsk. Sounded almost too good to be true, and yet this is the reason why Brsk are installing their own kit up the top of telegraph poles. So when I put in this order, and it's only taken about 2 weeks end to end to get this set up, which I thought was pretty impressive at the time of year when a lot of people might be thinking about these things and saving money going forward. All the guy had to do was go up the telegraph pole, take a wire that was already up there down, so that's the optical cable. So this is a light-based system. It's not using electrical signals over copper wire like the telegraph lines do normally. This is light, so it's light speed, depending on how much you paid for. So they take one of these new wires down, they take that across to your property, install it at the top of your property, and then they run it down to whatever point on the wall you would like it putting into your house at. They then install, now I'm going to get this wrong, an optical network terminal, an ONT device that sits on your wall. Mine has little glowy lights on it, and it needs power, so it needs a power socket next to it ideally to power it. And then they give you a router. My router is from a company apparently called Technicolor. Never heard of them. That was just something that films were produced in back in the day, as far as I was aware. But anyway, and it's slightly curious in that it lies flat. So it's a sort of a square shape, but it's flat. It's not like my version 1, which was vertical. So it requires a certain amount of footprint. I can sort of canter it onto its side, but I'm not sure if that's healthy for it. So I've left it flat for the time being, whilst I sort things out. Now, I was told, quite rightly by Virgin and maybe Brsk actually, that this was a sort of instant switch setup. So as soon as my Brsk service was running, my Virgin Media service would stop, and both companies were obliged to abide by that. So it was with some slight confusion. I'd had an email from Virgin saying that my service didn't end until February, and yet my scheduled install for Brsk was mid-Jan. So I thought, so you're going to keep on charging me even though I've had this installed 2 weeks before? And what happened was my Virgin service stopped as soon as the Brsk service was active. So literally the guy had gone out the door for about 5 minutes and everything stopped working, and I was like, what's going on? Oh, great, it's already broken. No, what had happened was my Brsk service was now my active service, my Virgin Media service was deceased. It ceased to be, it was pushing up the daisies. Fair enough, I thought, that's kind of what I expected anyway. So I changed all my network names from my Virgin service and sort of copied them across to my Brsk router, so all my devices just immediately picked up the internet again. And lo and behold, 500 megabits per second up, 500 megabits per second down. Now, this is early days. I've only had it in for just over a day, but it seems to be performing exactly as they said it would. Everything is very fast, very smooth. I haven't tried any uploads with it particularly. Do I worry that Brsk haven't been around for as long and might not be as resilient as the big boys? Well, yes, to a certain extent, but time will tell on that front. Now, cost-wise, they give you two rather novel options. You can either take it a month at a time, which is a little bit more expensive, or you take a 2-year deal and your monthly charges are way down on the basis of that 2-year deal. Now, this is where I get self-promotional. I'm going to include a link in the description and a code in the description, maybe in a little sort of tag up here somewhere, to tell you how you can use my referral code that they give you to get money off your install should you choose to go with Brsk. So there you go, I've done the gratuitous self-promotional bit. But I've given you some pictures here of the process, the sort of space you need, what it ends up looking like on your wall, because it's maybe not the sort of thing that would necessarily get covered by their own videos, and I guess their kit will vary from time to time as well. But the guy arrived a little bit late compared to what their text was saying he would do, but he told me he was going to be late, so I had no problem with that whatsoever. He also, the only other thing, and we had a little bit of a sort of a to and froing over the best place to put the actual line, but once we'd gone through it a few times, he explained it well enough that, okay, yeah, I see, I could see where he was coming from, because I already had some lines going across the front of the house because of the way that my Ethernet works. So I use a wired connection because I've got quite thick walls. That I think they will provide you with more Wi-Fi repeaters if you need them, but I didn't take that option. And they also provide you with a TV service if you want that as well. They do that, but again, I didn't feel that I particularly needed that. All I actually needed was the internet for the reasons I've explained about the TV being adequate to give me the various apps that I need to be able to watch what I generally watch day to day. So that was fine. So he was efficient. He cleaned up after himself. Asked if I could use my Hoover because he was apologised he didn't have his own. Didn't have any problem with that. It happens. But he did do a little bit of damage to my garden, and you see this. He seemed a bit nonplussed by the fact that I was a little bit upset about that, because he basically said, "Well, I had to put my ladders in." So I thought, well, yeah, I understand that, but you might have told me before you clobbered some of my plants. Now the plants might recover, and I just said to him that perhaps that's a lesson learned for you going forward. And I suggested maybe you could ask the higher ups if they could give me some money off, because I hadn't taken any money in termination charges from my other provider, because, as I say, I was out of contract, so that didn't matter. But he was perfectly polite. All good like that. Good communication, and also very good communication from the people I spoke to initially. Just trying to understand what would happen if, for example, I wanted to terminate within the 2 years, and they basically said they would do their level best to make that not be an issue, but in theory you would have to pay them the full whack for the 2 years if you terminated. Now, I got the distinct impression, because they're relatively small and they're British based, you would probably be able to have a sensible conversation with them over what your actual options were. But to my mind, I thought, well, I'm only taking internet. Even if I had to do that, and if you moved house, there'd be no question anyway. It's purely what happens if you do something when you're actually where you are currently and you want to do something to bring it to an early close. Now, I don't know exactly what their industry rules and regs are around that, but I figured that if I had them for like a year and I wanted to switch back to Virgin or something, because all the Virgin hardware is still there, you can still flick back. You're not, because it's a completely new line and a new setup, you're not losing anything. You've still got your sort of backup provision from other people if you want it. But the critical difference here is that their full fibre is genuinely full fibre. So because they're fully fibre optic, you get the maximum speed, whereas a lot of other providers will not give you that up speed. Now, don't get me wrong, not everybody will need that up speed. What I need is reliability, because I work from home fairly often, so I'm hoping I'm going to get that. But I do have a use case for being able to put big files up on a sort of reliable, fast basis. So that for me kind of sold it, and just generally the price was very, very competitive, because they're obviously conscious of the fact that they're doing a lot of installation work with their hardware. They need to sell subscriptions to recoup that cost, so they're being competitive, and the market is competitive because people like Openreach are now starting to make full fibre an option around here, whereas up to this point Virgin had really been the only option if you wanted a decent full fibre connection. But what I hadn't realised about Virgin was that they don't use fibre optics to go up. They use a coaxial. They've got a coaxial cable, I think it is, to put the signal back up, and that's why they're that much slower on the upload as compared to their download. And whilst it wasn't critical for me, the fact that I could get a faster download speed for far less money and a really good upload speed basically said to me, well, do you know what? It's worth the punt. It's worth having a crack at this and just seeing how it turns out. So, all in all, they arrived when they said they were going to arrive. They installed it when they said they were going to install it. I haven't had any sort of payments go out yet, I don't think, but I'm hoping that side of it will be smooth. They were very helpful when I spoke to them. They passed me around inside the organisation as they needed to be able to answer my questions. But they were quite well informed technically when I spoke to them, so they were able to answer the questions I was asking, even at a sort of a general call centre level. So I was quite happy with that as a concept. So if you are looking at your bills and thinking, ouch, and Virgin, do increase their bills on an annual basis. This 2 years, I've got a fixed fee for 2 years, which is nice. Have a think about them if they're in your area. They are definitely expanding the network, but they're in sort of Manchester, West Yorkshire at the moment, and I imagine they'll keep going. In the interest of balance, I have heard that there is a little bit of controversy about what they're doing with some of their telegraph poles, because they're putting some new ones in. But they just reuse a very, very old telegraph pole that was already a bit of an eyesore right in front of my house. So I'll show you a little bit sort of before and after of that as well. But all it is a end of the line coming off the telegraph pole. It's actually a little bit thinner than the one that comes in that was the old BT copper line. Not quite sure what flavour of line that was. That was probably before my time. But it's no great shakes when you've already got lines right in your line of sight. And he did say it was going to go up as high as he could put it, so it would be out of eye line. So I say, broadly speaking, at this point in time, I'm really, really happy with how it went. And I know that there are sort of Reddit groups and things like that, and Facebook groups for people who have taken them. So I think if you needed to get support and wanted to go outside of them for some reason, you could probably find people who could help. A lot of these issues will arise just because of general standard Wi-Fi through old houses kind of issues. That's not their fault. That's just the way in which your network is set up, and some of that stuff they can probably help with, but generally speaking, it's not for them to fix anyway. So overall, I'm optimistic. Basically, overall, I'm optimistic, and I have no idea how much I'll notice it. I might be looking for an advantage where there isn't much, but web pages do seem to come down smoother, but then my download speed has effectively doubled. So that's not because of their service is different, it's just because it's faster, and I went for a faster option this time. And the next one down is 150 megabits per second. You can go up to a gig. I think you can go up to 2 gig if you're feeling particularly adventurous or you particularly need that. But as I say, maybe in a really busy household with a lot of gamers and such like, and lots of films being downloaded, you'd need that sort of speed. But for me personally, 500 megabits per second is more than I need anyway, really. So yeah, if you do like this video, then obviously let me know in the comments what your experiences of Brsk have been. I don't know if I'd be able to answer every question. Their website is pretty good. There's good fact pages on there, and you can you can ring them up and have a sensible chat with them, in my experience. So give it a go. If you take the monthly option, you could sort of use the cooling down period or whatever and just sort of back out of it again and probably revert to your old service fairly easy. I think they're clearly able to turn things on and off very rapidly these days, so just give it a shout, give it a crack. Yes, it would be an extra, you would have some physical extra holes, but I found that I can just use my I mount my TV just on top of a sort of a piece of furniture, so I can actually mask. There are quite a few flashing green lights. I'll show you some pictures of that, but you can mask those obviously if you wish to, and just hide them. So yeah, it's not an insurmountable problem, but I think if you're going to take this sort of solution, you are going to have a little bit of hardware in your home to basically translate the light signal that comes into your home into a digital signal, which you then feed into your router, which then gives you your Wi-Fi signal throughout the rest of the house. And the router does give you Ethernet ports as well, so if you want a wired connection, you can do that as well very easily, and that's what I do. So I've got wired connection going from my router back up to my main computer, and that gives me the full speed regardless of any Wi-Fi issues or obstructions or interference. I can always get full speed from the router just by doing that. So depends very much on your situation, obviously, as to how you address all of that, but at least I've got the raw speed coming in the first place that I can do something with, and that's really what you're looking for ultimately, isn't it? So yeah, let me know in the comments what your experience has been. This channel is not normally about this sort of stuff, but I was a little bit excited about getting this sort of very totally modern broadband into the house, so I thought I'd just give it a crack and talk a little bit about it. But do like and subscribe if nostalgic toys are also a thing for you and that sort of concept, and otherwise I will leave it there. So cheers for now.